we'll see, is abduction, which is like the worst name for something because it's so confusing.
Yeah.
But abduction is reasoning by analogy. And so often I find myself thinking about things analogically, right? And this comes from Jackson, white male theorists of a certain age, and Bateson, or Bateson and Bateson, because Mary Catherine Bateson as well. It's important here. And so there are these three forms of thinking, and I think abduction is both fun. At the moment, it's hard for me to justify why it's good and useful utilitarianly, except I do have a book somewhere, it's at home, where people said, a lot of the breakthroughs by some of the great thinkers, I can't remember how it's phrased, occurred because they weren't just working on one problem, they were working on 3 or 4 different problems, and when they were stuck with one, they would move to another one, and their work on that somehow enabled them to fix the problem in the first one. So in my imagined paper that I might write one day, it's I think I can bring it together, but my sense is that in thinking about how I bring this to students, and again, my thing is mostly undergraduate, but the same would apply for HDR. One of the books that was published relatively recently was this book called Sand Talk by Tyson Yunkaporta. It says How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World, and in an interview I heard him say that it was a bombastic title. I can't remember how he phrased it, but we shouldn't overemphasize maybe the subtitle too much. But essentially, what he's trying to argue is that there are the Western way of thinking kind of has led us to a particular state of the world, which is obviously full of difficulties and challenges, whereas indigenous ways of thinking lead us to different conclusions and different behaviors. And I think the nice thing that just happened by chance is I opened it randomly last night, and here is, so recalling again abduction being analogical or metaphorical thinking. And so on page 118 of at least this edition, which is a soft cover one, he writes that any knowledge passed on as discrete information or skills is doomed to failure through disconnection and simplicity. Right? Simplicity, disconnection and simplicity, because it's not connected. Simplicity, I guess I would link back here to systems thinking and complexity theory. And the thing that is helpful for me about this book is that he uses systems thinking and brings his indigenous perspectives and knowledges in conversation with systems thinking. And so for me, this is quite useful in helping me to achieve some of, the objectives I want to achieve. So he writes that any knowledge passed on as a discrete information, any knowledge passed on as discrete information or skills is doomed to failure through disconnection and simplicity. Knowledge transmission must connect both abstract knowledge and concrete application through meaningful metaphors in order to be effective. Without this sacred and joyful act of creation, our systems become unstable and deteriorate. You need cultural metaphors of integrity to do it properly. And so here, I guess he's emphasizing that this thing which we call here on the board abduction is not just fun to do. These metaphors are important and can achieve real-world positive impacts. And that is potentially kind of one of the challenges for us. In terms of kind of what we want to do next with both the world and our students, I suppose. And I guess for the purposes of the exercise, I said this in the recording before, but I guess my engagement with feminism or feminist activists is important in shaping the way I view the world. Again, focusing less on objective and more on process, which I feel is analogical to a focus not on individual entities but on relationships.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Would you put process oriented there?
Oh, yeah. process. Process focused.
Focused,
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I suppose that I've also been thinking about in terms of like the community of colleagues that we're part of here is the importance of like ecosystem work is the way I've been thinking about it this month. Ecosystem work, which is about the relationships, right, as opposed to like the shiny things that look good on a promotion application. Right, and so and I feel like there's people who do really good ecosystem work amongst us and in the university that we never see, but also it's hard to place a clear value on it, but it's kind of what makes coming to work nice and pleasant and builds the community.
Exactly, yeah.
So
The unsung heroes.
Yeah.
Workers, Not
Yeah.
greatly underappreciated. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was just consulting my notes for the recording, and I just made a note about grounded optimism there. And I think what's important for me is, in connecting it to the comment here by Tyson Yunkaporta about concrete application, is the ability to enable students to understand and feel their sense of agency in the world. Because especially with the course on globalization, it's very easy to kind of feel overwhelmed by the global forces and, you know, massive history and abstract entities and processes. And so the courses I've begun to design it in recent times is really about how our relationship with these global forces and where we can make, like, you know, meaningful engagements and interactions and differences. And important in that is having a realistic sense of optimism about the fact that you can engage in effort and there can be an outcome as well. And those stories of people, you know, working together to have an outcome often don't get to us because they, you know, whereas anyone would rightly, you know, think that the world is going, as one student said, you know, to hell in a handbasket. But to try and make students more aware of the fact that, you know, there are positive things happening in the world, and we need to pay more attention to it in the same way as we need to balance our diet, as I think I was saying before. Our information diet. And I think that's important in terms of enabling students to have a sense of agency. So, yeah, the classroom environment I try to create is one where there's, you know, positive vibes and atmosphere as being kind of the foreground, because I feel like the learning will come afterwards if they have the positive emotional disposition, which again goes back to kind of something I was saying before, where I kind of foreground, I place emphasis on the pre-verbal or pre-rational, state of human being, and that's what I try to get, you know, install in my classes. I mean, whether successful or not, I don't know. But this notion of grounded optimism is important for me because it's not naive optimism. It's also been called intelligent optimism, but I want to say it's grounded because it's grounded in, you know, in stuff that's really happening around the world, and we want people to feel, as they rightly can, that they can make a difference. Because if they don't believe it, then definitely they're not going to try, because why would you? So yeah, that's about it, I think, for what I needed to say.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to keep this as anonymous as well, or?
Yeah, it's hard, I think, because so much of it is like clearly traceable to me. So it's hard to know what to do. Yeah, let's just go with anonymous for now.
Yeah.
And if people can work it out, then they must know me already.
Yeah.
So none of this is anything I'm embarrassed about. So I think it's okay.
Yeah. I'll bring a copy of consent form. I just forgot about it.
Okay,
And
that's
then
cool.
there are some choices you can make, whether you want to, leave this anonymous, and also there's your audio recording.
Yeah.
We can change your voice digitally if you want or not. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, I think nothing I've said is embarrassing.
No, not at all. Yeah. Some people just choose to use their own name.
Yeah. Let me sleep on it.
Yeah. You think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome so much.
So, just about the metaphor stuff, there's a guy called Turner. I think he wrote about the value of metaphors, but also images and concepts for social theorizing. You might like it as well for your paper. I can send it to you if you want.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and then there's another guy talking about the power of metaphors. But they're not always, like, metaphors are not always analogies. Some are analogies, others are not. Yeah. But then in the Chinese intellectual tradition, there's a heavy focus on the use of analogies for theorizing.
Okay.
Yeah. So because I was looking at your Taoist, kind of liking there, and you can link this back to that as well.
Yeah. Oh, so before you press stop, I just realised there's one more thing.
All right. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is very interesting for me. I don't know how interesting it can be for other people, but so this is one of my books from 2015 called Second Thoughts. I mean, that's definitely going to be identifying, right?
Yeah.
So Second Thoughts, so it's connected to systems thinking in that because, people are at different points in the system, they have different insights to other people have different insights. So one of the principles I think is true of if you take a systems thinking approach is that no one has the complete picture of the situation, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, what that then leads you to is, if you want to make better decisions or whatever, then you need to be more inclusive of people, right? Which then connects to the feminist stuff that I got from engaging with the feminist activists. And also what I think is important, again, for me, if I was to talk about values, is humility, which is not just being like, oh, that you're very kind. No, it's not that. It's about sort of your humility in realizing that you don't have the full picture, right?
Either,
and for me, in Second Thoughts, the introduction is like, okay, what Second Thoughts is that you jump to whatever conclusion you do about anything naturally, but you should be having second thoughts. And so it's sort of a bit of a play on the notion of second thoughts. And so Second Thoughts is like a principle that whatever you think about whatever the situation is, or new information can come to light, and so you need to have a little bit less certitude about almost everything.
Which goes back to what you were saying, that we all harbor inconsistent beliefs and try to make that work in different situations.
Yeah.